You can put Tsunami Bomb on a lot of bills, but like that's a quirky, weird band. Like it's a weird sound that just sort of exists outside of whatever is popular, and then somehow fits. You know, you can put it on a show with garage bands or metal bands or punk bands or hardcore bands, and it'll do well because it just kind of uniquely stays itself. And then some people don't get it. So I think like ironically enough, on surface view, you look at Tsunami Bomb and you go like, why is this on AT? But then when you really look at it and step back and look at what Tsunami Bomb is and how it sounds, it actually does fit by just being another weird band.
Hey, Dom, thanks for coming to the podcast, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah. So funny story. Dom Davi is an old friend of mine who I happen to play in a band with. For anyone that doesn't really realize, I'm in Tsunami Bomb, and it's the band that he started way back in the day.
Guilty. Yes. Yeah, we finally convinced you to be a part of it.
I know, right? Yeah, it only took like 20 years, right?
We had to court you for a while, but
yeah, it was a slow burn, but eventually I warmed up to the idea and it was fine. But yeah, man, incidentally, you happen to be my upstairs neighbor too, so this is kind of an interesting twist on the whole. Oh, yep, there you go. All right, I hear you. What is Dominic Davi working on right now?
Well, for me specifically, my day job, as you know, is Alternative Tentacles. So I am constantly finding new ways to keep moving the label forward. That's on the daily. So I'm continually helping artists put out records, and that has been only become more of a thing since the pandemic COVID-19 shutdown, is like how to help artists move forward. So that's been a really giant thing for me. That also bleeds over into Tsunami Bomb, into finding ways that work for our band and our bandmates, and how Tsunami Bomb will continue through this time. I'm also, but for myself, I've been working with 3 Gigs, my main podcast, where I interview different artists, mainly performers, mostly musicians, could be anything, about their first, best, and worst performances of all time, while also doing the Alternative Tentacles podcast, as well as 2 more podcasts. I don't know how I became a podcast guy, but 2 more podcasts that have to do with horror. Monster Candy podcast that I do with WWE NXT wrestler Shotzi Blackheart when she's available, where we talk about different horror movies. And then Fearless Movie Killers, where we make fun of terrible horror movies. And then I also am working on a comic book. I've been an illustrator and graphic designer. I own a company called The Dinosaur Factory that makes different merchandise based on my art. And through that, I'm working on a comic book like a graphic novel series called Bramble. It's a story that my brother and I worked on that is kind of in the tone of like Watership Down or Secret of Nim. So that's been really exciting and has been a lot of work. But yeah, I pretty much bounce between all those things and they keep me pretty busy.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like you have a whole lot going on, but I mean,
no, not much.
No.
Yeah, I didn't want, it's, sometimes I worry that I overextend, obviously, and that certain things are suffering because of that. But at the same time, I don't, if I reach a stopping point with anything like a creative block, I just shift gears into something else for a while and get something else done. But there are things that suffer because I do so many different things, things that I would like to get done faster. But also, podcasting was really kind of fun. It feels like sometimes it's the new like DJ set, like come see my DJ set. come listen to my podcast. Like, it seems like everybody's doing it, but I do think that there's room for everyone in it. You know, there's a lot of interesting ideas and people and conversations to be had, and I think people can enjoy that. And it's fun. They're fun. It's really accessible and it's really interesting. And yeah, I mean, there's like more and more people doing it, so it gets harder. But I mean, like, I'm really excited about your podcast, for example. I was really
Thanks, man.
stoked that you wanted me on it. But when you had talked about doing this, I thought, what an interesting take on things. So
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was a guest on your podcast, Three Gigs, kind of in that first season that you did.
yeah, pre-Tsunami Bomb. So
Right, before I was in the band. And you know, that I thought it was such an interesting, you know, idea just to kind of have this very focused, you know, show, you know, as it relates to the first show, you know, worst show and best show. And you know, you're gonna have so many different types of, you know, stories around that based off of not only the individual but the genre that they're in, like maybe when the band was doing things and where they were coming up in and everything. And so like I really love that show, and I'm excited for you to keep going with that.
thanks. I really am proud. Like, I love all the podcast shows that I do for different reasons, but I really, that one occupies a special place in my heart. And the people who love it, I notice, love it a lot. You know, it's like, I wish it was more out there, but I think it's just my little special thing. And
Sure.
what I really like about the simplicity of that question is that, like, the story of your first show is basically that show made it so that you kept doing them. So if you're talking to a performer, that first show, whatever, however good or bad, that was the moment. That moment made them keep going. And here we are talking about it. And then the
Right.
best show is that moment where it's like, this is why I do this. This is why I'm working to do this. You're basically asking, like, what is the feeling that you're chasing? Like, what is the reason for this? You know, the first show was you trying to get to there. Then you tell the best show, and that's the story of what you've been trying to get to. And then and a time that you feel like you got there. Like, oh, this moment, I felt like this is why I'm a musician or a wrestler or porn star, or this is why, this is the reason, the drag queen, depending on who I've interviewed. You know, it's like, this is the moment. And then the worst show is that time when you feel like you just don't want to do this anymore. You'd want to go home. And somewhere between all the stories that people tell, you really get an idea of their point of view as a person, you know, in their vocation, and that they've done this crazy thing that not many people do, whether it's a musician, a wrestler, ballet dancer, anything. And this is, you get a real intimate understanding of their reasoning for doing it, like how they started, why they keep going, and how they've endured through the hardest times.
Sure.
And I think that that's what the charm of that show is. Like, that I stumbled on very luckily with the help of friends who helped shape the idea of what that was going to be, of something that allows me to intimately get to know my interview subject within a very short amount of questions.
Right.
And they
Yeah.
reveal a lot more. And I think it helps that I'm a musician too, and I'm a performer, and most of them know me or have been to my shows or seen my stuff. So it's not like, I'm not like, so tell me how you feel about this. It's like, it's more of a conversation like this is, where it's, you know, I have experiences too, or I've been to that club, or I've been in that moment. So it becomes a very disarmed conversation really quick.
Sure. Are there any episodes or guests that you had that you would say, I mean, not to say that like one was better than the other, but like, were there any stories that you particularly thought were really interesting out of the guests that you've had so far?
Oh yeah, there's some amazing stories in there, and it's hard to just clock one, like,
Well, of
just
course, yeah,
like, yeah,
but
this one was a guest, but there are some amazing guests. But what I would say to anyone who might be listening to this show and considering checking out my show is that don't just think that the artist that you are aware of tells the best story. Like, there are some people who are not very well known by the populace, and I think some of their stories are incredible.
Mhm.
For example, like, though I think that DBC should be famous, He's a fantastic musician. Every band he's been in has been good, but nothing's blown up on a national or international level. So many people wouldn't know who he was. But his episode, he tells some of the most hilarious stories about sneaking onto Warped Tour, about crashing at a punk rock house, just the show where they almost got beat up. And they're incredible, and they're so good. And he's such a compelling storyteller that somebody potentially who's just checking out my show would just be looking for the initial reaction is to look for someone you recognize. But the charm of the show is it doesn't matter if you know them or not. You'll get to know them during the show. But then again, like Teenage Bottle Rocket, had some amazing, that episode has some amazing stories too, and a lot of people know who they are. So it's like, yeah, I mean, coming to mind, I have like a ton of different stories. There's even people who aren't very good storytellers at all,
Yeah, there were. I'll say I'm not going to name any names. I'll let people listen and find out for themselves. But there were a few bands and artists that you spoke with that I was actually surprised at, kind of how kind of boring it was, And it's not like they didn't have things to say about the worst, best, and first show, but at the same time, you're like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not interested in this, So like,
and you'd think you would be. That's kind of why I say it like,
yeah.
And that's there's some people in there that are pretty famous.
Oh, totally.
Tell that, and then you listen to it, and you're like, really? That's how it happened?
Yeah.
And it's nothing wrong with it.
No,
it's like,
no.
There's some that were so difficult. I actually edited the episodes to make it sound like they're answering faster than they are.
Right.
There's a lot more pauses and ums and ahs, and if you look at the edited file, you see all these like slices. As I tried to like succinct what they were saying so that it actually flowed. But yeah, that's why I say that. Don't necessarily assume that the artists you recognize, the most famous ones, tell the best stories. Though some do. There are some amazing, Spike, singer of Me First and Gimme Gimmes, he had some incredible stories.
He truly did. Yeah,
and he's very well known. Joe Escalante had incredible ones. I have a bonus episode. It's actually a web article. Sean Yassault from White Zombie.
Right.
She didn't want to commit to anything on the podcast because she's afraid she would say something that would get her in trouble. And I'll let everybody figure out with whom she's worried about getting in trouble with.
Right.
But she was willing to write out an article and tell the stories because she really wanted to. And I was able to find the videos to some of the shows that she was talking about, especially her favorite show of all time. And there's video right there in the article with the story she's telling. So you could actually see her perform the actual story that she tells. And I mean, it's really interesting. It's a great read, but that's only on the website. It's not an episode. So
right on.
But yeah. So, I mean, like I said, that's the thing. Don't just, if you go check out 3 Gigs Podcast at 3gigspodcast.com, plug.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Don't just assume that the ones you recognize are the best stories. You might be surprised.
Yeah, no, for sure. But let's talk about things going on with Alternative Tentacles right now. So you've been kind of, running the show over there. I know that, we all know that Jello Biafra is the, label owner, and he was one of the founders of the label way back in the day. And he basically, like, the buck stops with him, but you run the day-to-day operations there now.
Yeah. I essentially take care of everything. Essentially, the workings of AT I supervise in all manner, essentially, for him. In the end, yes, the buck stops with him. Certain decisions are made, calls are made, and I have to work within the limitations and the boundaries that work for Jello, because ultimately it's really important to me that it remains Jello Biafra's label and it has the feel of Jello Biafra. It's an extension. At this point in time, Alternative Tentacles is an extension of Jello Biafra's worldview and approach to music. And so it's not mine, but at the same time, it is affected and influenced by me because I'm running it, and it does have a lot of that. But yeah, it's been very interesting. I took over and have been kind of navigating it on a day-to-day basis.
Has there been anything that you've been trying to personally do or to bring to the label? Because, you talk about it being an extension of Jello Biafra's kind of worldview and everything, right? And the man has very eclectic taste. I mean, you look at the back catalog of Alternative Tentacles, and it's this totally mixed bag. I mean, it's kind of hard to really pinpoint any like kind of continuity between all the artists, except for that they all kind of have this weird kind of eccentric vibe to them. I mean, you have like heavy hitters like the Melvins, and then you have, obviously the old like Dead Kennedy stuff, but then coming into the more current timeline, you have Tsunami Bomb, like the latest Tsunami Bomb. So how do you get from the Melvins to Tsunami Bomb? I mean, how does, I guess what I'm asking is like, with you being in the mix now, what is it that you're trying to do to make sure that you can stay relevant as a label in the current, setup? As we all know, tastes change and, all that stuff. But, when you try to find a new band, what are you looking for? I mean, is it really Jello that's finding the bands, or is everyone that working there kind of doing A&R and
Everyone,
okay.
everyone, for sure. So one of the things I like to call Alternative Tentacles the weird, wild, and wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
He had a choice that he could have made. Like for instance, Fat Mike made a choice with Fat Records of having a certain kind of pop punk sound that he was looking for, and he attempts to bring his knowledge of NoFX and his songwriting to others and to help develop them, and it works best, arguably, when it is a band that aligns with that. And people who go, I mean, Fat is more ranged in their sound now than they used to be. They used to have a very similar, like all their bands, if you liked one, you probably liked all the rest.
Sure.
There's probably very few that you didn't like. Now it's a little bit, they're spread out a little bit more, but there's still that core. Jello kind of went a different direction with Alternative Tentacles, and it's arguable what is better. I think initially with marketing and branding, Fat's choice did very well for them, clearly. Alternative Tentacles did a more difficult route where it had less to do with the sonic similarity and more to do with the very eclectic taste of its owner, which ranged. And so there's a reason for everyone being there. But it was really important to him to be a voice for bands that didn't have homes other places. For example, like Itch.io is definitely a unique signing, being it's a 40-person industrial-ish electronic marching band that comes across like a cult.
Yeah.
Their live performances are absolutely unforgettable. And recorded, I mean, you could argue whether they capture their charm on a recording, but Jello wanted to put it out because he was like, if not us, who would ever put this out? And I think there's a good argument there, and that's how he's always seen it. When I stepped in, one of the things that I wanted to do was show him that his interests had not faded from the world. I felt like, with some exceptions, some very important exceptions, I felt like when I got there, a lot of AT's bands, not all, were no longer active.
Right.
Or they were white 40-somethings who weren't playing as much, and there were some incredible, like, that's not to say their albums weren't incredible. I don't think there's a bad album on Alternative Tentacles. I don't think he's a bad artist. But I got there, and it felt like there was not this push. And those that were pushing and active felt kind of disconnected from everyone else, and they felt kind of lost. And my goal was to take what Jello loved about music and show him that it still existed, and there was a more efficient way to go find those bands and bring them in and give the label some spark again with people who are active now, because I felt like it had become kind of friends of friends, and and the music was great, but AT wasn't really making enough money off it because these bands weren't really pushing it. And it happens, that as an owner of a label yourself, you sign a band, you put all this stuff, and you're really excited about it, and you can't really control when they break up. So anyway, I started trying. My goal was to affect AT in terms of taking Jello's taste and bringing it to the current. And one of the first bands that, and another thing is to kind of expand the kind of roster we had, which I was really excited about because AT was really known for queercore, lots of women, lots of, there was no, it wasn't all just a bunch of white guys. It was always really dynamic and diverse, and I wanted to bring that back. So under me, I feel one thing I'm proud of is that, like, the bands that have come on, we have a lot of really strong bands that have mixed with the bands that are already there, that are that are starting to expand the diversity of the label. I think we have a long way to go. I'm never looking for, and one of the things that's important is, like, I'm not looking for bands specifically. It's like, if you're a bunch of white guys and you have a band, I'm not going to not listen to you,
right?
Because you're white guys in a band. But I'm always looking for something interesting. It has to be more than who you are. I didn't sign the Darts because they were all women. I signed the Darts because I fell in love with the Darts.
Yeah.
And Jello fell in love with the Darts, and they were incredible, and we just loved them. And really, it was about, initially with them, it was about, like, just putting out a 7-inch so we could talk about them, and then we got lucky and we were able to do a full album. LA Machina, Tsunami Bomb in the same case. I didn't think Tsunami Bomb was an Alternative Tentacles band. To me, it wasn't, we didn't align with it. I mean, we've always been weird. Tsunami Bomb, to speak of our band, has always been a deceptively weird band.
Right.
Like, you listen to it and you think, oh yeah, this is like pop punk band, kind of dark, there's like a synth element into it. There's Scala elements. There's punk, there's metal elements. There's all these elements kind of put in a blender. But then when you step back and you realize that we don't sound like anybody else. Like, there's even back in the day, and when we started, like, we were always aligned with AFI and Tiger Army and a lot of the darker Nerve Agents, the darker punk bands of the Northern California scene in the San Francisco Bay Area. But we didn't even sound like them. We were dark like them, but we didn't. So at first you go, how does AT go from Melvins to Tsunami Bomb? But the truth is, it's like, where does Tsunami Bomb fit in modern music anyway? Like, it's a mishmash of a lot of styles that can play with a lot of different people. But from playing with us and from watching us, when you didn't, you can put Tsunami Bomb on a lot of bills, but, like, that's a quirky, weird band. Like, it's a weird sound that just sort of exists outside of whatever is popular, and then somehow fits. You can put it on a show with garage bands or metal bands or punk bands or hardcore bands, and it'll do well because it just kind of uniquely stays itself. And then some people don't get it. So I think, like, ironically enough, on surface view, you look at Tsunami Bomb and you go, like, why is this on AT? But then when you really look at it and step back and look at what Tsunami Bomb is and how it sounds, it actually does fit by just being another weird band. Like, we like the bands that stand out and will be a unique performance. It will be a unique music, a sound that we feel is important to be heard. And I think that AT has done well with that by it's become a collector's label.
Right.
So that answers the end question, of how do we stay viable now? What are we looking for? We're looking for something unique. We're looking for something that stands out, that pops about your band. I'm not looking for a minority necessarily. I don't want, but I would love that. I want to give more voices out there. I'm trying to help Jello find the bands that really speak to people of now, but in a way that still fits with his taste and his goal for Alternative Tentacles.
Yeah, almost like within, like, the mission statement, if you had to say something like that of the label, right? Yeah,
right. And we're hard on stuff, like, and to be sure, like, there's been some bands that I really wanted and he resisted. And there's bands that he's excited about that I was like, I don't know, be careful, you know what I mean? So, but I mean, once they're part of it, like, there's no favoritism. It's like, I was worried about Tsunami Bomb coming to AT because of that favoritism. I didn't want any of the bands to perceive that I would favor my own band over them. It's so easy because it's like, someone asks for an interview, I'm right there. I could give one, or call up somebody in my band. Like, otherwise I'm trying to call another band and trying to go back and forth to set up something. But yeah, I think that I do think that right now, if you wanted to be on Alternative Tentacles, we need to see something that you're doing on your own that you've created, and we have to hear some sort of unique version. You have to remember, like, even if something's new to you, that sound, he's probably friends with the band that you're copying,
Right.
who they copied, and he saw that, and he knows, he'll listen to it and be like, that sounds like blah 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 blah, and I'm like, oh, I guess it does kind of, but I've given up. Like, I don't know, sometimes I think, oh, he's gonna love this, and he hates it.
Right.
And then other times I think he's gonna hate it, like Tsunami Bomb. I thought he was gonna not like it at all, and he actually loved it.
Yeah, I mean, and I can say from my own end, like, it wasn't necessarily that I was shocked by that, but I was certainly a little bit surprised, because I know very little about him personally. I've met him a few times. He's a nice enough guy, but like, um, you know, really the majority of the information that I know about him is through talking to you about it. And, the picture that I've, been kind of given is that he's just got this very eclectic, but also very thoughtful approach to music. Like, I mean, he's a student of music and of a lot of punk rock, and not only just punk rock, but a lot of other weird types of music too. So it's like, the guy can't objectively like discern like what is good and what isn't,
Yeah.
and
To him.
whether or not you
To him.
agree with them is debatable. But at the same time, if it fits within his worldview as being like, no, this is good, this is interesting, I want to do something with this, like, and thankfully he has a platform to do that. I mean, one of the things that I try to do with Sell the Heart is a similar type of thing, where it's like, if I really like the band, even if they aren't already selling, hundreds or thousands of copies, on their own, it's still like, to me, feels like it's good, it's special, and I want to see it get a push, so I'm in a position to do that, so I want to try that, and so I can kind of appreciate where Jello is coming from in that respect, where it's like, maybe another label might take a chance on them, but I really like this now, and I'd like to try to give it a push now.
It's interesting because he's also very critical of the bands on the label itself. Like, he doesn't spare you his opinion. And so I'll use Tsunami Bomb because it's easier. I'm not hurting anybody's feelings. It's us. But like, when he was interested in us initially, he would also say, like, I don't like that epi fat punk bullshit you guys do, but I know your fans like it. He goes, I like it when you get darker, meaner, and raw. He goes, I look for that raw sound that you guys have, and that's what I like, and it's more interesting to me. But I understand the woes that you guys do. That has its place. And he was very clear about that. Like, that's not his favorite parts of Tsunami Bomb. When people listen to it and go, how does Jello like this? It's like, he doesn't like that side of us. I like that he calls it the epitaph,
Right.
like the Epitaph Fat Records sound, which I never thought of us like that, but that's how he did. And then he also called us at one point, Pat Benatar goes goth backed by TSOL.
Right.
And he was like, that's not a compliment. And I was like, but I would buy that record.
Yeah.
But then when he saw us live for the first time on a show that we weren't really happy with, but he loved it, he came up and he was telling everyone in the band, it's like, I want you to check out Blondie and listen to like some of their albums. And at first, I feel like some of our band members were like, great, we're getting compared to another female-fronted band. But then I realized, and I was telling them, I was like, no, he knows them.
Like,
Like,
he
knows
knows
Blondie. He's met them. He's watched them. He's seen them. And he sees an analogy like that they always and I talked to him about it more and confirmed this, like, they always stood out in their own scene, in the punk scene at that time, and ended up blowing up rather large by doing their own unique thing. And he was trying to say, like, you guys stand out like that too. You're a bit of a weird duck. You don't follow anybody else. You're doing your own thing. You should listen to them and listen to the kind of music they wrote and how they compose their albums, and think about that when you compose yours.
Right.
So there was like, what sounded like this kind of dismissive advice was actually a more deeper advice about album craft. And that He was trying to appeal to us, like, listen to certain bands that really you'd be surprised how much you have in common. And at first glance, Blondie and Tsunami Bomb do not sound anything alike. But I understood in the further talking to him that he was really like, you know, they really push the boundary at their time. You guys do too. Keep pushing, push harder, go
Right.
further, get weirder, make it more interesting while still being catchy and approachable. And he does that with all the bands, not just us. But it's easier to talk about us without bringing up the things that he said about other bands.
Yeah.
But he says it to them, like he never hides it.
Yeah.
He's very critical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely seems like, you guys have a lot of stuff going on at AT, and like, during this whole, pandemic that's been going on, like the way that it's affected the music industry from top to bottom.
Yes.
What would you say are the, I guess, I mean, I know obviously it's been evolving pretty rapidly, because you've had to, kind of pay attention to everything, based on timelines being shifted, almost every day now. But like, from a label's perspective, what is it that you guys are trying to do in order to maintain the ship, as this is all going on? Because, distributors close down, record stores close down, obviously bands can't tour. So like, the bands that are on the label that were touring, or doing any kind of live shows, have had to completely cease, at least in the actual real live capacity. And, how are you weathering this storm right now?
Well, it's very there is a certain amount of day to day kind of thing, because I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. We're winging it. But thankfully, online sales have been, while up and down, consistently have been up. But I also feel like that's been a huge help. Huge. And I do feel like some of it is being a shoulder to cry on for certain artists, because their entire year has been obliterated.
Right.
And more so, like Tsunami Bomb, we're lucky because we all do other things. Tsunami Bomb's like definitely a side thing at this point in our lives. Well, at past times it was not, but at this point, everyone's a little older. But like for some bands, this is their main thing. This was their moment. Like this is when they're kicking it and they're going for it. And to have it suddenly be sidelined and not know when you're going to get to play, and then that the forecasts are so grim. They go from, maybe late next year, maybe more like 2022. It's like, it's bad. So you're really trying to be there and just be a very good source of clarity and moving forward. I've been talking to a lot of people, because I'm like, it doesn't have to be my idea. It just has to be the best idea. I'm looking for really good ideas. Looking for really good ideas in the way we can move forward. Because the label itself has more reach, I think, than any individual band that we have.
Right.
Some of them have more of a reach than others, but the label consistently has a strong following. I think that putting out records still is important. Yes, touring helps sell records, but just because you're not touring doesn't mean you have to stop putting out records. I think it's still a good time to put out a record. I think you just have to mitigate your expectations. You're not going to have that it's not the sales in the months after are not going to be as strong,
right,
as they would have been had the band be actively touring, ordering records from you, and people seeing it and then going to a store and going, I did want the record. I didn't buy it that night because I didn't want to carry it, but now I want to order it. Now I want to pick it up. But people still want music, and they still want to support their favorite artists. I think that there's going to be we're looking at a lot of ways of developing a continual stream of content, not only from releases from our artists, but the content they create. With LA Machina, a new band that we picked up, their plan, my heart breaks for them. Their plan was they were gonna be on one of the main stage at Punk Rock Bowling in Las Vegas on May, and we were gonna have their 7-inch ready for that release, and that would have been huge. It would have been huge because they're great. They're so good. Instead, we encouraged them to put together their 7-inch got delayed. It's coming out on August 14th. but they did 2 music videos for it that are related to it, and we found placement. We did the badcopy.com. We had them showcase one of the videos. I believe Punk News had showcased the other ones, punknews.org, earlier. We've been building them up and just trying, we're trying to create incentives for people to order the record directly on why they want this physical item, why it's worth it to have this physical item, whether there's certain limited edition qualities to the release or bundles that feature goods that are really cool, like, a cool shirt or trading, like in their case, they're using trading cards.
Right.
You're looking for just different fun things that people will get a kick out of, that will grab their attention and they'll enjoy it. And not a fake, you're not trying to fake out or con anyone. You're trying to legitimately build excitement for this release and this artist and remind people why the label is interesting and viable tastemaker, for people, worth following in of itself, because the world of Alternative Tentacles is always interesting.
Right.
And we have some strong releases coming, which is really helpful because we also have some really tight times coming, because the way distribution works, we're about to feel the shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
So the shutdown that has happened for the last couple months with record labels before they opened up, which presumably a bunch have shut down again, in some cases. I think business owners have become a little bit better at navigating this as well, so they're not, whereas like back in March, they completely shut down. Now I think that people have figured out a way to do curbside and deliveries and certain pickups. But that time frame, the March, April, May, June, those months we get paid for in fall.
Right.
So, for example, Alternative Tentacles is going to feel that pain this fall.
Right.
It's going to be really hard, and so we're about to enter a very difficult time that we have to navigate. But luckily, like Tsunami Bomb has a 7-inch coming up. Wink. Jello's got a new album coming himself. That's incredible. That's huge. Legendary Shack Shakers and Spindrift both have albums that are coming, both delayed but are coming. So we have some really strong fan favorite releases that I think each of those bands have strong followings. So I think that's going to help carry AT through this time.
That's
a very
great.
long-winded answer, but it's a very difficult time. Like, we're really trying hard. I'm like, look, right now I've been doing research to figure out, last year I started the Tentacle Fest, Alternative Tentacles Fest, because I wanted to create something that would start a 2-day show in Berkeley that sold out both nights, total success. I don't want that to stop. So now I'm looking at ways, how would I do a digital version? And I have some ideas, and I'm going to be reaching out to the band soon about it. But basically trying to continue to find ways to help the artists reach people and be exciting for people who are fans of theirs, short of touring.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's different avenues out there. I mean, we've been seeing some bands like take the online approach where they've been doing the live stream shows, or they've been doing, virtual meet and greets. Some artists who are a little bit more prolific are like churning out more material, and they're just like introducing it on Spotify or streaming services or through Bandcamp, or, doing short run like CD or cassettes or something like that. I mean, there's things that people can be doing. There's a lot of different avenues. They're not all going to be winners, but if you look, and if you're, able to have the time to do it, there are some things that artists can be doing.
I really think that right now the time to think about, I don't have answers for when people are going to play again.
Right. I don't think anyone knows.
I mean, I have some theories, but that's all they are. But what I can tell you is that content is king right now. I think Tsunami Bomb has even been a little too dormant for my taste, but we are working on stuff that's going to pop off, and then it'll be a little bit more interesting for our fans. Yeah. I think there's things that we can do. This would be the time, like, hey, if you're sitting around and you don't know what's going on, you don't know what to do, film a music video. And it could be the dumbest music video it could be all finger puppets, but make something fun for your fans.
Right.
Something. do the live stream of playing, play something on acoustic, put together the people. Like, it's worth the effort. And then put that out there and let people enjoy these like little moments. I saw Suicide Machine were packing orders and talking shit about the people whose names they were packing in a joking way. Like,
Yeah.
and people were watching that and laughing their ass off. You and I did the most ridiculous drunken show as
The most ridiculous show.
as a charity work, and we raised a couple $100 for them, you know, like on Instagram. Like, we did help them.
Yeah. It's been really interesting seeing what different places are doing. Like that whole live stream effort that the Parkside did that we were a part of, you know, I mean, they weren't the only ones doing that, but like, that's a very creative, tangible way to, you know, offer up new material or just a fun event while people are, you know, sheltering in place. And, you know,
it was really funny. So for people to
great.
understand, that was the San Francisco club, the Parkside, and was trying to survive. I hope they're doing okay right now, but they were trying to pay their employees. They're trying to help out any way they can. So they had a bunch of artists do these online shows, and you could do whatever you wanted. And for some reason, Andy and I agreed to do it, where I was going to sing the songs in place of our singers who are not in the same place as us. But during the live stream, both our singers, Oubliette and Kate, signed on to laugh at us.
Right. And they laughed, they did.
While we sang their songs, our songs, but the ones they sing to them. Right. But luckily people were donating, and that was the whole point. And they did this for a couple weeks. I thought
like
it was great.
Decent Criminal and a bunch of other bands on there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it was definitely a one-time thing where it was like, people are like, "You're going to do that again?" I was like, "Absolutely not." Like,
well, never say never. You know, I mean,
I shouldn't say never,
yeah,
but I'd like it if maybe the girls took over and actually sang something proper.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think honestly, right now is the time to be creative. Come up with the different ways that you can put stuff out there and entertain people, and keep them reminding them that you exist. And I don't think you should hesitate putting out a record. If your record's ready and you have a record, go ahead and put it out.
Right.
You know, not every artist tours behind their stuff, and maybe punk fans are going to have to learn, you know, we're going to have punk fans get used to punk bands not always touring. That doesn't mean your album isn't viable, but it does mean you have to adjust your expectations and adjust the expectations on how you're going to promote it. You should be making more music videos. Tsunami Bomb is making music videos right now. I have no qualms in revealing that to anybody, like where you have a bunch of videos coming.
Well, because we also have a lot of demos, like for songs.
Yeah, we're working on a new record. Right. Because by the time we get to play again, our new record that we didn't get to, we played 5 shows behind?
I think 4 or 5 shows. Yeah,
4. Literally means that record, that album will be at least a year old, if not more, by the time we actually play a show. So it's like, I think Tsunami Bomb should put out another record this next year. So we're going to, you know, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the demos that we have. It's going to be a great record. It's an angrier, grittier record. And so that's what I think. I think that everyone we need to be creative, and content is king.
Not for nothing too. I mean, there's, you know, there was I wouldn't call it a phenomenon, but there was like a period a few years back and like leading up to the present where you started seeing a lot of these artists, like J-Som is an artist that I would point to, where, you know, she basically recorded a bunch of songs on her own, I think, and with a friend who was like someone who helped produce her, in her bedroom, and released them on Bandcamp, and it just caught fire, you know, and she's now, I think, on like Polyvinyl, I want to say, but, you know, has like a couple of records out on like a pretty large independent label, and, you know, with pretty wide distribution and touring, you know, well, she was touring the country and like playing major festivals. You know, obviously there's not room for everyone to have that happen, but it certainly can happen. And I mean, this is just an example of somebody who was doing that a few years back. So, you know, if you have the means, I mean, and the time, and I mean, obviously it's kind of an unfortunate circumstance, but if you have the creative juices, you have a little bit of time, and you have the, you know, willingness to sit down and make it happen, something can happen from this, and you can get your music out there. And
Well, you
like,
never
there's
know
so
who's
many
listening.
avenues now right now.
You never know who's listening.
Yeah.
I thought some of the best advice I'd ever heard about making it in music was play. Get out
Yeah.
there and play. If you're doing something that's going to grab attention, people are going to notice and they're going to care about it. And it starts with your friends. It starts with the people you know. If they get excited about it and share your song, but you can't. But at the same time, you can't force it. They gotta have to like it. They're gonna like it or they're not gonna like it. You know what I
Right.
mean? I would never tell anyone like, oh, if you're not getting the response you want, then you're not playing the right songs. I wouldn't say that, because it's like, you have to play what's in your heart. You have to love it. And if you love it, that's the most important thing. And you never know when an audience is going to be found for something. So
Right.
don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of fail. Don't be afraid of that nobody shares it. You never know who's going to actually hear it, but they won't hear it unless it's out there. So I would definitely think that that's a great example. That girl, it's like make the thing,
Right.
and put it out there. Be terrible.
Yeah.
Let it suck. Like, it may not, the song that you think is not that good could end up being the song that you play for the rest of your career. You have no idea. Like, Lemonade was one of the first songs I wrote for Tsunami Bomb. We play it. Is the most requested song that we have to this day.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. It's like, I wrote it with no changes because I was trying to make it easy for people, because we had fill-in guitarists and fill-in drummers. I needed something easy for them to learn and play right away, so we could come together as a group, whoever we were borrowing. So Lemonade was super easy, but it's still one of the most popular songs. I would have never predicted that. But so I like saying, nobody knows. So just put it out there, make it happen. And right now, not being able to play shows is no excuse. There's plenty of opportunities to have your music get heard. Make it, put it together, make it happen. I mean, even if all you have is an acoustic guitar or a keyboard and a microphone, or your phone, and put it up if it's terrible, because a good song is a good song.
Yeah,
And people will
it's
tell
true.
you like, hey, you need to record this for real, this is great. People will respond to it.
Absolutely. So real quick, wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit. One of the things that we were trying to tap into with everyone we speak to, or that I speak to, the royal we on this podcast, is kind of getting an idea of like maybe some artists that you know of that maybe other people don't. So are there any bands, either locally or even on a national level or even international, that you've been really liking over the last, say, year or two, that you think people should try to check out immediately? And who are they, and like what are they about?
So I'll start small and go bigger.
Sure.
A couple groups that I think are worth noting. I think out of the Bay Area, the Hammer Bombs is some of the best classic Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area pop punk I've heard in years. Even calling them pop punk feels kind of misleading for now, but they're just a really entertaining, amazing band. Goodbye Dreamboat, I think their album's called. Everyone should check that out.
Yeah.
You're not going to be bummed.
And I officially want to go on record and second this. Like, Hammer Bombs are incredible.
Their shows are incredible, but their songs are really good. Every member of that band is an incredibly talented musician and songwriter, and has a very good understanding of songwriting, and it shows in their record. Their debut album, they only got one. They have like an EP they released before, but it's really all about that album.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Nobody's Baby.
Mm-hmm.
That's another local band out of San Francisco. I think they're about to have a music video. It's some of the members of Atomic Age.
The Atom Age, yeah.
Yeah, the Atom Age.
Mm-hmm.
Atomic Age. They'd kill me if they knew I'd mess that up. The Atom Age, who do nationally tour, and then a local band called Dirty Denim kind of merged into this band. And I think they're really exciting. I think they have this dark doo-woppy garage sound that I think is really cool and very interesting, and I'm excited to see where they go. I think that I'm really excited about Ellie Machina I think they have a really cool power rock and roll trio sound. They're really good. I love the Darts.
Mm-hmm.
Will always love the Darts. Their psychedelic garage is fantastic. Highly recommend. Death Valley Girls
Mm-hmm.
On Suicide Squeeze is a phenomenally talented band. I really enjoy them. They do a lot of that desert rock psychedelic sound that's kind of modern and really cool. Amyl and the Sniffers from Australia.
Yeah, they've been getting a lot of buzz.
They're dirty proto punk, pub rock. They're just, rough and dirty and greasy, and it's really fun to listen to. Boy, there's so many. What's that? There's this duo that do that, like a satanic band. What are they called? Man, there's another one that I really like. I don't know. Twin Temple. That's it.
Twin Temple.
Twin Temple. They're really good. I've fallen in love with that band recently.
Okay.
They've been around for a while. But Twin Temple, their biggest song is like Lucifer, My Love. Like it's all like this. Their whole satanic thing is kind of tongue in cheek, but also very. I mean, it could potentially be real for all I know. But she has a beautiful voice. Very classic, doo-wop-y, retro, soulful, really fun. And then I really love. I don't know. I could probably keep going. Like,
yeah.
It's funny because it's like I have been one of those people that talk about like, there's nothing new good. Is there anything good out there? And it's like, dude, if you think that there's nothing interesting going on right now, you're not paying attention. There are some incredible acts that are out there. I just can't say enough about it. Together Pangea, I really like.
Mm-hmm.
I've listened to a couple of their stuff. But yeah, I could keep going on and on. I mean, and it's not just punky stuff. I'm focusing on that, but there's plenty of hip hop and electronic that's really exciting to me too. So I think if you think there's not enough going on, then you need to pay more attention. There's some really incredible acts out there making noise and should be making more noise that are really worth the attention.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to like having knowledge of where to find the new and interesting stuff is too, because it's easy to put like alerts on, Spotify or another one of these streaming services to give you like the hot new releases that they think are the new releases. And, you can have whatever opinion you have about Spotify, but, I always try to encourage people to check out Bandcamp, because Bandcamp is a place that, virtually anyone, I mean, literally anyone can put any music on there, and a lot of people that don't have their stuff on the major streaming services actually do put it on Spotify or on Bandcamp.
Bandcamp is great. I love Bandcamp. Yeah. I think that's a great site. I definitely recommend people just trying to get lost in that. I mean, there's so many bands that I left out that I could name, but that's a good batch, I think, to look at of things that I recommend for people to check out that's going on right now.
Absolutely.
I think that there's just a lot of really important stuff happening.
Yeah.
And I think it's evolving and being interesting, pulling from the past and moving it forward. Yeah, so get lost on Bandcamp and Spotify. Start going down rabbit holes. You won't be sorry. Seriously. Right. Look at playlists on Spotify and really just exploring genres on Bandcamp. You can literally enter a genre and start looking what's in there.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've been really excited about how Bandcamp has been, waiving their fees, at least once a month as well.
It's really nice to do. Yeah.
Situation, so the artists who have music on there can actually end up getting a larger portion of the sales, through their Bandcamp sales on this. It's usually like, I think the first Friday, I think, when they've been doing it. And I don't know if they're going to continue to do it or not. I know that they did it, I think it's like the last 3 months, but I would hope that they would continue to do it as long as this is going on. But
Yeah, I think Bandcamp's really doing some exciting things to try and make it more interesting for everybody. The AT's found a lot of success in putting stuff out through there, and Tsunami Bomb was able to raise some money for some of our friends who were struggling at first when we released a song through Bandcamp.
Right.
Just through there, and people could donate, and we were able to take care of people. We raised a nice chunk, like it was enough to pay for some groceries and stuff for them, both of them, and we were really glad that we could do that. I was really happy that that worked out, you know. And so, I mean, and that was a song that everyone could download for $1, and we were able
or
to
more if they wanted.
Really give a substantial chunk of money that made both of their lives easier at that time.
Right.
You know, two of our friends, like they appreciated it, and I was glad that we could do it, you know. So
yeah, I mean, you know, from the start of the pandemic and then leading up into, you know, what happened with George Floyd and like the Black Lives Matter movement and all the protests and all of those, you know, other events that have been going on throughout this, what feels like 10 years of a year, you know,
decade.
You know, I'm genuinely impressed and glad to be a part of a community, really, because I mean, our community is huge, you know, and you know, even though it gets diced up into small pockets, it's all part of this same huge community that is this music scene that we're all involved with, and it transcends the punk scene, it transcends the indie rock scene, it transcends the ska scene, etc. And we're all trying to make the world a little bit better in a small way if we can do it, you know. And I mean, if us putting up a song and giving it away for $1 and saying, man, if you want to pay more, great, if not, and then us making a couple $100 to give to our friends who need it, I mean, that's a small thing, but it's huge for them. And all of that stuff adds up to a huge, wonderful like world that we need more of that. We need more of that, period, you know.
No, I mean, we were able to give both, you know, and it was great. Like people like, and that's what I'm saying about being creative with stuff. Like,
right.
I think bands and musicians would be surprised if they really apply themselves to what opportunities are out there and how you can help others, not just yourself, but help others and help out while also bringing attention to yourself. I think, but you know, it's all just depends on everyone. I feel like I said, the most important thing is to create content right now and build an audience like you would normally. Really, in the end, the goal for any group or creative group is to build a following that interacts and passionately cares about what you're doing. So you can still do that without shows. I mean, we all miss shows. And shows are an easy way to do that, especially when they're well attended. You got a packed show, packed audience, they get into it, they're into it, like you're grabbing a big percentage of them because they're excited about it. That's great. But yes, that's easy, but that doesn't mean that you can't still do it, you know. I mean, are all of us going to put up a song that we record in our bedroom and have it suddenly get thousands and thousands of likes and listens and downloads? Like, no. But again, you never know who's listening. Right. We have one friend who's just a server, a waitress, and Nadine, and she's out of not doing that. And she's been posting songs. She has a beautiful voice. Her and a ukulele. She's taught herself how to play.
Yeah.
And it's great. And now she has a bunch of artists who are willing to lend her tracks. I gave her a bass line. I believe you offered to do guitar for her.
Well, I'm gonna try to do some synth stuff on that track. That track is awesome.
Yeah, Ricky is going to do drums. She wants to do drums for her. I mean, so it's like, this is somebody who never did music in their life, and now they're suddenly talking to like professional musicians who can really do some really exciting stuff. And she's having a blast, you know. It's like,
that's great. Yeah.
And I mean, she doesn't have a big audience yet. It's not like a ton of people are tuning in, but her friends are, and she has a beautiful voice. And it's like, that's what I'm saying. Just make something, do something.
Right.
You know?
So speaking of making stuff, you know, we'll kind of end it with this, but you touched on it a little bit briefly, a little bit ago, but so Tsunami Bomb, you know, has a few things coming up, and, you know, I know that I could speak to this if I wanted to, but since you're the guest, I wanted to give you an opportunity to really like talk about what's kind of in the pipeline for the band, you know, over the next, you know, 6 months to the year, because we don't know when things are going to come back to quote unquote normal, but hypothetically, let's say within a year's time, we're kind of back to a point where we can start playing shows again. Between now and then, we have some things in the works, and maybe touch on that a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Well, right now we are sitting on a 7-inch that we are going to release. I don't know when this airs, but we are going to be announcing it real quick. So hopefully by the time this is out, it's out there and can be ordered. We're doing 2 versions of it. We're doing a special limited edition version for our street team and mailing list so that they can order.
So sign up for the mailing list.
Yes. So you sign up for the mailing list, or you seek out the Facebook group or the message board. There's going to be different avenues, but for people who want a copy of a very limited version of it, like a colored vinyl version. But then AT will be putting out a version of it as well that will be widely available. So I'm excited about that. It's got re-recordings of 2 old songs for a reason. We're not going to really re-record our old stuff that much, but these 2 songs had specific reasons. Like one was only recorded on our 4-track. The other one was not recorded with the keyboards that were so important, but it gave an opportunity for people to hear Kate perform. And then it's some live bootlegs that we had made for us that we are now bootlegging into a back of a 7-inch. So we're bootlegging our bootleg for this 7-inch, and it's only going to be on the vinyl.
Right.
But we're also working on a new album, like we talked about. There's definitely 100% plan to have a brand new full length out for this next year. We are looking at reissuing the Invasion from Within EP. It's time for that to be on vinyl. It never was. It was on CD, but then the 6 songs were put together with the Trust No One collection that came out. But we have the freedom to put it out as its own standalone, and I think we're going to, because the artwork is amazing. It was done by a dear friend of mine and Oubliette's named Logan Whitehurst, who had made a lot of our early album art. And it's just such a cool looking release. It'd be nice to have a standalone version. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, I would say that there's a lot of stuff about to happen. We're also doing some comps, and I would not. Tsunami Bomb is like it, and Andy will back me up on this. We are very slow to move. It's like a glacier pace, and it's frustrating to us all. And we all do it, some band members more than others. But it takes forever to move. But then once it does commit and says, okay, we're doing this, then it moves really fast. And then it's like so right now I feel like we're at the end of a slow movement, and I think we are about to come to terms with it. So there's going to be a bunch of comp stuff happening. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another 7-inch in the works at some point that we put together. But I think the next 6 months to a year is going to be a little bit more active than the last 6 months, as we were reeling from this happening and our plans changing and us all being distant, what we can do. Now I think we have a better idea of how we can pull that off. So a bunch of music videos are coming for the Spine That Binds to help promote that, since we weren't able to do shows. I would say at least 1 music video is coming. Maybe up to 3 are on its way. And then, like I said, 7-inch is going to drop any minute. Full length next year, and somewhere in between all of that, the Invasion from Within is going to come out on vinyl.
We're excited about everything going on with AT, with the Dinosaur Factory, with all of your podcasts, and with Tsunami Bomb. So, best of luck with what's going on, and we'll make sure to let everyone know about how to contact you for all of those, and
DominicDavi.com.
Yeah, basically just DominicDavi.com.
There's links to everything there. It's a hub basically for everything else.
Yeah. But yeah, man, stay safe, and keep doing what you're doing, and we appreciate you coming on.
No problem. I'm going to put on some clogs and go dancing above the room you're in.
It happens every night.
Really excited about that. So I'll do my best elephant dance.
Yeah, my wife and my cat are very excited about this.
Can't wait.
Bastard.
Don't listen to anybody talk you out of what you want to do.
my conviction, to not get wrapped up in your contradiction, to choose my adventures, to get past the fiction.